Hello and welcome to the Astrology and Spirituality Show with Elisa and Patrick Arundel for Monday the 11th of January. Now we're going to do something a bit different today. A while ago, before Christmas, we asked our patrons to suggest some keywords that we might talk about in an ad hoc way. And the concept we've come up with is going to be called Thought for the Day. So thanks to Radio 4 Today programme for that. Probably a little bit of copyright infringement, but Elisa's going to show this this lovely sweet jar that we got.
Yes. So we've got this sweet jar and we've written down the Patreon suggestions as well as some of our own.
Which was from Heather and Martha?
Yes, Heather and Martha.
And we've added some words ourselves. This is completely off the cuff. We're going to do this now and then, perhaps once a week. And we just thought I'd bring a different spark of energy to today's proceedings. So, Elisa...
Are you going to pick the first thought for the day?
Wouldn't it not be yourself? Ladies first.
No,
so I'll shuffle it up. Right, and you can see, shuffle it up. So we don't know what's coming out.
No, we don't. Right, okay. So...
I think this might be a bit more dynamic.
Yeah. Okay.
And the winner is...
The word on this card is contracts. So it's a very interesting...
oh my word.
It's very apt.
Right, okay.
So, some of us may be going through contracts, thinking of signing things. I think if this is the case, it is important to just lay out all the details of it, have those conversations, read the small print, make sure that any contract that any of us sign is good for both parties.
Yeah, I think good for both parties is a very important thing. I always remember years ago, somebody contacted me wanting Horoscope telephone lines, which were quite a big thing about 20 years ago. So I agreed to provide the content, and the telephony partner, David, offered me some terms, which I accepted. And then about 3 months later, he rang me up and he said, look, I'm really sorry, but I'm not making as much money from this as I thought I would. How do you feel? And I said, absolutely no problem at all. Let's change the contract. We'll rip up the one we had and come up with one that's fairer to you. Now you've had the experience of the situation. And the funny thing is, I spoke to David on Christmas Eve, and I think we've been friends for the whole of those 20 years, even though we're not in the same business or anything, but we've retained a connection, and he's a lovely Pisces. So,
yeah, it is important, because contracts are an exchange of energy, and we could even look at this in a very spiritual viewpoint. We could think of our life here on earth as a spiritual contract, a contract that our soul has made to come here. Now, some people have many different views on what this could mean, but for me personally, my view is that, and you might not agree with this either, I don't know whether we've really spoken about this, but my view is that the astrology of our life is almost like our program that we're born into. So of course we have free will, as with any contract that we sign, but there is almost like an outline of what we can expect from this experience. And it's just about making the most of what has been written into our personal journey contract.
Yeah, that's a fantastic concept, because obviously some people do have natal horoscopes, the nativity, that is quite difficult. They do have quite difficult influences. I actually have in my horoscope a grand fixed cross. So you've got four competing quadrants, all that have very different personalities, if you like, that have to try to find the middle, the core. And that has taken some doing for me. But of course we can grow, we can embrace our natal horoscope, even the tough bits, and grow and become something beyond that. So there is an option. It's not something that has to dominate us all our lives by any stretch of the imagination at all. Then of course there's evolutionary astrology, where that chart moves from the time we're born, and the planets moving around interact with that moving wheel, and that informs some of the things that we experience in our lives. For me, contracts really, the main thing is that if there is a contract that is totally to one person's advantage, so for example, we've had in Britain these personal protection equipment contracts where entrepreneurs who might be very good at business have worked with the government to procure the gear because government was overwhelmed and stretched by the enormity of COVID. So I think in that kind of situation, most of us would agree that if someone was talented at procurement, had connections, had the resources to bring that kit to Britain, as it was that I'm referring to, quickly and efficiently and in a value for money way, that actually would be a decent contract because you're tapping into that entrepreneur's skill set. But if the entrepreneur brings stuff that's not well made, can't be used, is out of date, or gets paid a huge amount of money for something that is not worth that, that is not a fair contract. So that creates resentment and disassociation. So we had a government advisor in Britain called Dominic Cummings who decided that he was going to visit his folks at their home despite the first lockdown. So although he wasn't held to account about it, what's happened is a lot of people would have thought, well, if that's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. So therefore, if he can do that, I'll do that. So how many people has that subsequently led to the deaths of? We don't know. I'm not trying to shame him. He's a human being who I feel made a mistake that he didn't own. So contracts need to be with ourselves. We need to be honourable with ourselves. So we don't go into a situation where we're promising more than we can realistically deliver. And at the same time, we're aware of what the other person's situation is, but also we need to make them aware of what our situation is. And if we have a situation where somebody only sees it from their side, that's not a good contract. So contracts are about, as Elisa said, an exchange of energy and an exchange of fairness where both sides get something of what they want, but not necessarily perfection, because that would be naive. So that's my view of it, I feel.
Yeah, I love that. So what does the astrology feed into that today?
Well, I think the fascinating thing about the astrology is that looking at the wheel just now, we actually have a stellium of influences. We have Saturn, Jupiter and Mercury all in Aquarius. And this time last year, we had a stellium of influences in the sign of Capricorn. And of course, this week, we're going to have a new moon in the sign of Capricorn, which is going to merge with the last remaining big hitter, which is Pluto, which is going to be there until 2024 on a part-time basis in 2023 when Pluto goes into Aquarius. So if we look back a year ago when the whole COVID thing was really gaining traction in the Western world, I think we all are fairly sure that something was happening at the end of the previous year, 2019. That's why it's called COVID-19. So what we've got this year is a collection of energy in Aquarius, which is very much to do with people. And it's also to do with rights, and it's to do with truth. And I've just been reading that Amazon have banned a particular social media player from operating on their platform using their technology, because this is often used by people who are taken off Twitter. So we're now getting a little bit of a clue of this Aquarius energy that's coming through, that some of the dominating voices that's come through sheer power, but particularly old money, that have held sway for many, many years, are now being pushed back around the concepts of social justice. So I think that's fascinating, and I do feel there's going to be more of this. There's going to be more demand. People are craving more sincerity because it is poisoning all of our lives, the amount of dishonesty there is. However, we do have Mars and Saturn in a right angle, which is creating real tension between people who want to live their life in a more material way, a more immediate way around desire. And the big picture is about trying to step back and be a little bit more logical and use the air energy of Aquarius to just raise the dimension, raise the frequency of the way we think and interact with one another. So I think this is a good time to think about contracts in general, contracts with ourselves. Are we leading a life that's really, truly worthwhile? Is it just about consuming things, buying things? Is it about caring for those who are less fortunate? What is our personal contract? Is it in good shape? Is it out of shape because we've got out of touch with what really makes people decent and noble. It may sound incredibly idealistic, but obviously because I've got loads of Aquarius in my chart, this is stuff that has called out to me for years, whether it's protecting the environment, protecting localism, protecting animal welfare in terms of consumption of animal products. Nothing, if that's your thing to eat animal products, I understand and respect that. I do now too. But it's making sure they're looked after well. And what they eat is also good for them. And when they're coming to that time when they're not here anymore, that's done in a decent way, as decent as possible, so that they go through as little stress and suffering. So all these kind of things have been part of my contract for years, to be honest, and I can only be really truthful to you. It's felt very, very lonely for a lot of my life. I became a vegetarian when I was 15, and that was considered completely freaky at that time. And, I do believe that out-of-town shopping centres was a fundamental mistake by governments, because what it did is then close down the vibrancy and energy of the centre of town shops, which is about community. So community is something I feel very passionate about. I did my diploma in marketing through a cooperative college. So cooperation is something we can all embrace. But it has been, quite honestly, profoundly unfashionable. And someone wrote on one of my videos, "Oh, you're a socialist." But I'm not a socialist. I believe in society. Society isn't socialism. Society is about being more enacted between one another. So the contract we can start, I think, to begin with, is with ourselves. Then it can be with our relationships. Then it can be with our values. Then it can be with the people in our community,
and that can
so
spread
on.
out into our material contracts, because
And there's nothing wrong with doing well materially.
And maybe we could do a little exercise today where we get a piece of paper, we write down what we think our contract is at the moment.
That's a fantastic
what we believe
idea.
it to be, and then we edit it how we want our contract to look, and then we could sign it. It could be a really nice sort of spiritual exercise to do, to see how we could change the contracts in our lives.
I totally agree. So
do that now.
This is a powerful start to the week. We do have that new moon in Capricorn later this week, which is conjunct Pluto. So I think this can be a transition point where we take the best of that Capricorn energy, which is diligence, hard work, application, reliability, decency, good manners, all the good things that Capricorn is about, and take the best of that into this new emerging way that we all need to live, which embraces, whether we like it or not, automation, technology, robotics, artificial intelligence, and obviously technology itself in terms of the devices we use. If we can get some humanity back into that whole mix, it's surely going to be a better world.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's our start to the week. We wish you a lovely Monday. Check out, please, your free daily horoscope beneath this video. But from the association,
it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from her. Goodbye.